Thank you, colleagues. We're going to move on to the next item of business, which is a statement by Jean Freeman, the Cabinet Secretary for Health, on delivery of COVID-19 vaccine. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions at the end of her statement. I would encourage all members who wish to ask a question to press their request to speak button. And I call on the Cabinet Secretary. Thank you.
My apologies, Presiding Officer. I hadn't put my card in. Presiding Officer, yesterday was the day we've all been hoping and waiting for, and so I'm pleased to return to the Chamber to update Parliament on the deployment of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, the first COVID-19 vaccine to receive authorisation to supply from the UK regulatory body, the MHRA. Previously, I set out the advanced planning we have undertaken so that we could be confident that as soon as the first vaccine supplies arrived, we were ready to begin. Today, I can confirm that we will begin from Tuesday, the 8th of December, along with our counterparts across the 4 nations of the UK. Previously, I also set out a number of areas where we could not finalise our planning because we did not have the final and detailed information. Some of those areas remain, but the authorisation to supply received from the MHRA overnight on the 1st of December and advised to me in the early morning of the 2nd, alongside the final advice from the JCVI on the Pfizer vaccine that they published yesterday, provides some of that important information. Firstly, on the overall age range to be vaccinated. JCVI have now asked that we include 16 and 17-year-olds who have underlying health conditions. We will do that and factor those young people into our delivery. Secondly, MHRA have been clear that of the supplies arriving in December, we should retain 50% so that we can provide the second dose to those who have received their first dose within the time frame advised. And finally, we have detailed information on those for whom this Pfizer vaccine is not advised, women who are pregnant and women who plan to be pregnant in the next 3 months. These are all vital pieces of information which will come perhaps differently in content for all the COVID-19 vaccines MHRA authorises, and which allow us to complete the patient's leaflet to support informed patient consent and the necessary clinical governance protocols and advice to clinical teams. Throughout, we have worked, as I said, on a 4-nation basis. And so yesterday morning, with my colleague health ministers, we said that subject to the first batch approved supplies arriving, we would begin, as I've said, on Tuesday the 8th. I will discuss where we are with my other colleagues on Monday evening. Between yesterday and next Tuesday, detailed work and discussions are underway covering a number of issues. Completion, as I've said, of patient consent work, clinical governance arrangement protocols, safe transportation and storage guidance, data collection and training, which will occur on an iterative basis for the clinically accredited staff who will vaccinate. The training materials are being finalised by NES as we speak, using the detail now available from MHRA and JCVI, and the first sessions are scheduled for tomorrow and then for Monday, and we will then repeat that process throughout this entire programme. As members know, we will follow the JCVI advice and guidance on priority delivery of the vaccine. The vaccine aims to reduce mortality and morbidity from COVID-19, and the guidance prioritises those most at risk from harm on an age basis, asking us to then work our way through youngest adults, taking account of those who are clinically vulnerable. The only sectoral exemption to that is the health and social care sector and the health and social care workforce, who are in the first priority group alongside those aged 80 and over and care home residents. Professor Wai-Shen Lim, the chair of the JCVI COVID vaccine subgroup, has said that the aim of vaccinating care home residents and staff, everyone from the oldest to the youngest and healthcare workers, is to cover almost 99% of vaccine-preventable deaths from COVID-19. So this is clearly exactly the right approach for us to take. Now, members know that Pfizer vaccine has specific storage and transportation requirements of exceptionally low temperature and limited transportation time once taken out of that low temperature environment. It also comes to us in pack sizes of 997 doses. All of that poses particular logistical challenges in vaccinating individuals close to their home, so clearly a challenge in vaccinating care home residents and indeed for elderly citizens who live in their own home. I'm very pleased to say that over lunchtime today, following detailed discussions led by our Chief Pharmaceutical Officer, we now have confirmation on the basis of the stability data that the Pfizer vaccine can be transported in an unfrozen state for up to 12 hours and can be stored undiluted for up to 5 days. I'm also pleased to confirm that under certain conditions, we can pack down to smaller pack sizes, both of which makes this vaccine more usable with minimum wastage for care home residents and for our older citizens. So in effect, we can take the vaccine to them or close to them, and we will begin that exercise from the 14th of December. From next Tuesday, the 8th, we will begin vaccinating first the vaccinators themselves and then work our way through the first cohorts of health and social care workers. When the first delivery is received in Scotland, it will go straight to the 23 commercial freezers we have, which can store the vaccine in the required temperature of -70 degrees and are located across Scotland, including in our important island authorities. In the first week of vaccination, we will deliver to a priority group of individuals who can go to the vaccination storage areas, and I'm delighted our local authority colleagues will work with us to ensure access to transport for staff who need it. Working in this way, in the first week of the new vaccine, will also allow our key pharmacy staff to be on hand as we run the process to make up the vials into doses and then vaccinate, as we test out the data recording and the clinical governance protocols and work through the pack-down process for the following weeks. So we are ready to implement the national plan I set out 2 weeks ago, which sets out the overall policy direction and guidance, provides the delivery framework and the service delivery guide, develops and delivers a national workforce model, provides national training, covers procurement and logistics, provides national information and advice, and the tools to record data about vaccinations when they take place. Locally, NHS Board's own delivery planning is well underway, putting in place local recruitment and deployment of staff, with their local authority partners identifying locations that are accessible and as local as possible, and securing the support they need, including from the national support we are receiving from the armed services to set up and manage those local centres in a COVID-safe way. As other vaccines come through the MHRA authorisation and JCVI guidance process, we will flex our planning and delivery to take account of any necessary changes. But on the basis that we receive the vaccine supply that we expect when we expect it, we should be able to vaccinate the first phase by spring of next year. The rest of the adult population will follow as quickly as possible thereafter. Our workforce planning and recruitment is on track to secure the 2,000 vaccinators and support staff we need by the end of January. An existing core of trained and experienced vaccinators from the flu programme will transition over to COVID vaccination over this month and next, and we are actively recruiting from the emergency registers and the NHS Scotland Accelerated Recruitment Portal, and drawing from the wider clinical workforce of GPs, pharmacists, dentists and optometrists. From Tuesday next week, we will need 160 whole-time equivalent vaccinators per day to begin delivery, and we have them. All of this work for next week and the weeks beyond will be overseen by me and senior officials, and I'm delighted that Councillor Stuart Curry will join us from COSLA to ensure that we can maximise the input and expertise our local authority colleagues bring to the nationwide exercise. As we progress in what will be a fast-paced exercise, we will, as the First Minister said, make every effort to keep members updated on both the national picture and their local arrangements, making initial information available from next week. My colleague Jo Fitzpatrick, the Public Health Minister, will oversee that and will take on the additional work of responding to any local issues members raise. A significant part of that information will be on the safety and efficacy of the vaccine and the others that will follow. But let me be clear, in the MHRA authorising the vaccine for supply, no corners have been cut. The process has been as rigorous and robust as it always is, and as we would expect it to be. We will, over the coming weeks, be issuing clear information to the public, not only on the safety and efficacy of the vaccine, but on our delivery plans nationally and, importantly, locally. We need, as best we can, given the caveats I've set out on delivery and vaccine properties, to be clear in our plans so that everyone knows what to expect and when they are likely to receive their invitation to be vaccinated. Presiding Officer, a vaccination programme of this scale is a significant logistical challenge and requires a major nationwide effort. But it is one we undertake with optimism and determination to succeed. There will no doubt be glitches on the way and unexpected difficulties to overcome, but science has excelled yet again to give us hope. Now we will get on to deliver on that, and I look forward to working with members across this chamber in that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary, and we have a great deal of interest in asking questions. I hope we can make progress through all the questions. I call Donald Cameron to be followed by Monica Lennon.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of her statement? Yesterday's announcement was groundbreaking and gives millions of people across our country hope that we will soon return to some semblance of normality. But we still have a long way to go, and it's vital that we get the rollout of this vaccine and future vaccines right. For instance, we would welcome the government publishing a full list of venues across the country that will administer the vaccine and which venues will open this month. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary these questions? Firstly, on workforce, can she tell us how many of the 2,000 vaccinators and support staff required to deliver the first phase are in place in each of the health boards? And of these 2,000, how many will be vaccinators and how many support staff? Secondly, given the particular storage needs of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, how many freezers are currently in each health board area? What is their capacity? And does the government have orders out for any more?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to Mr Cameron for his questions. In terms of publishing a full list of venues, as the First Minister said, we will publish as soon as we have them confirmed all the venues that are currently in place across all the board areas. That I would expect would be something we'll be able to do certainly before the Christmas recess. But remembering the first priority groups are health and social care workers and care home residents, and I'm delighted that the agreements that were reached over lunchtime mean that we can take the vaccine to those care home residents and those who are over 80, some of whom we would want to be able to take it to them in their own home because that is much more person-centred for them. There are 23 commercial freezers that have been purchased. They are located across all our health boards and our island authorities. I would wish to advise members where they are, but I have to say, and this is not a reason for not doing that, but national security, which is a part of MI5, is very unsure about the wisdom of making public where our storage is for what is a very precious vaccine indeed. And so we continue to talk on a four-nation basis with them because evidently, obviously and evidently, people want to know that their area is covered. What I can do and will do is advise members of how many each board area has, so that you can see, I hope, that we are ensuring proper coverage. They're there, they're being tested, and they are all of a size that can accommodate the vaccine supplies we expect as they come through. In terms of workforce, my statement made it clear the number of whole-time equivalent vaccinators we will need for the first week or so. There is a model that we use in order to estimate the number of people within that 2,000 that we will need at various stages in the programme. That is currently being prepared and written so that I can advise Ms Lennon, who asked me that question before, and I'm very happy to ensure that Mr Cameron and the other health spokespeople also see what that model is and therefore how we flex and plan the recruitment of individuals and where we need them to be, including how we bring in those additional clinical workforce on sessional basis, like pharmacists and dentists and optometrists, as and when we need them.
Thank you. Monica Lennon to be followed by Mark Ruskell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of her statement. The rollout of the first vaccines in just 5 days' time really is the best early Christmas present that people in Scotland have been dreaming of, and there's really good news in here for care homes, which I welcome. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, will all care home residents be vaccinated during this first phase, and when does she expect all care home vaccinations to be complete? And I also welcome the commitment to keep MSPs and the public updated. Can I ask, in terms of public information, will that include a helpline that people can access for advice and confidential guidance? And when might details of that become available?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I'm grateful to Ms Lennon. I too am absolutely delighted at the progress that was made over lunchtime that will allow us to take the vaccine to care homes. It is one of the most critical things, and it was one of the most challenging things about the Pfizer vaccine. So I think our senior officials and indeed MHRA and Pfizer themselves deserve our congratulations and thanks for getting us to that place. So in terms of care homes, one of the reasons why I made a point of pulling out the changes that had appeared since I last spoke in the Chamber about the vaccine programme was to highlight the clear advice that of the supplies of the vaccine that we receive in December, we need to hold 50% of that so that the people who are vaccinated in December can get their second vaccination in January. Now, that is not quite what we expected. And what it does mean is that, for example, in the first of the batches that have passed testing, that we expect 65,500 doses. Instead of vaccinating 65,500 people, we vaccinate half of that number and hold the other half of the doses so we can do them again within the time period allowed. Now, we expect more supplies to arrive over December, and as those are confirmed and we're clearer about that, that lets us know how many people we can vaccinate in December, ready to redo those individuals in January. So that has an implication on whether or not we can vaccinate all the residents in all of our care homes. And so I've asked our clinical advisors, who will also have a connection directly to JCVI, how, if we have to, should we prioritise our care homes, so that we will get through them all, but we won't necessarily get through them all in the month of December. So how might we do that? And as soon as I have that information, then I'll be sure to let members know that. But also, I hope as I get that information, I also get confirmation about other supplies and their delivery dates, which may ease that particular pressure. In terms of the helpline, we're giving active consideration to the helpline and being able to put that in place. There will be a national phone line that in the first phase will answer information, and in the second wave will also be able to book you onto appointments in your local area. So in the first phase, it will give you information and then put you through to a local call handlers who will be able to give you information about your particular local area. In the second phase, where we're looking at the rest of the adult population, it will also be able to book as well. So that will be in place from the start of next year. And in addition to everything else, there will in January be a national household door drop with information on the vaccine, its safety, what we expect it to do, when you should expect to be seen, and the local plans in your area.
Thank you. I just encourage the Cabinet Secretary, there are 15 more questioners in 10 minutes. Mark Ruskell to be followed by Liam MacArthur. Mark Ruskell.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance copy of this very welcome statement? But there have been concerns raised by clinicians, including the head of the Royal College of GPs, that Black and minority ethnic people do not feature in the JCVI's priority list. The guidance states that there should be flexibility in vaccine deployment at a local level. We know, for example, that deaths among Scots from South Asian backgrounds are twice as likely to involve COVID-19 than those from white backgrounds. But will this be factored into the Scottish Government's prioritisation process?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I completely understand Mr Ruskell's question and what prompts that. The JCVI did look very carefully at all the evidence and the data that's available from across the UK on the impact of the virus on the BAME community, and concluded that whilst it was relevant, what was more relevant was the impact in terms of age on the whole community, including that community. So in following the JCVI guidance, we obviously have to take that into account. However, our CMO continues to look with colleagues at where we might add flexibility in to our delivery. I can't confirm that one way or the other at this point. It really is important we follow clinical advice in all of this and make sure that the access to the vaccine is in proper order of priority and is equitable. But I'm very happy if that position changes in any respect at all to make sure that members are updated.
Thank you. Liam MacArthur, to be followed by Emma Harper.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. The biggest scientific effort in history has helped find a vaccine. Now, the biggest public health exercise in history is needed to distribute it. It's essential, of course, that islanders are offered equal access to this vaccine and that the priority groups living in remote parts of Scotland are fully included in the first and subsequent waves of the rollout. Can the Cabinet Secretary therefore give my Orkney constituents a categoric assurance this will indeed happen, particularly given the welcome clarification she's provided about the way in which the vaccine can now be delivered and confirmation that freezer storage will be available in our islands?
So freezer storage is available in all our island authorities, so Orkney, Shetland and the Western Isles. And Mr MacArthur is absolutely right. The development in terms of the Pfizer vaccine and how we can store and transport it will make a significant difference, not only in terms of care homes, but also to our island communities and our remote areas. And that means that we can make good, as we always intended to, on our commitment to an equitable distribution and access to the vaccine.
Emma Harper, to be followed by Brian Whittle.
News of the vaccine is very welcome, and I'd like to thank all the scientists and clinicians who have worked tirelessly to assess the quality, safety and effectiveness of the vaccines. And in the interest of transparency, I've been contacted by the NHS to participate as a vaccinator myself. But can the Cabinet Secretary expand on the regulatory process and when we could expect the Pfizer vaccine to get full licensing approval beyond the welcome approval to supply?
Cabinet Secretary.
So the quality, safety and effectiveness, I'm going to be really quick, but we will set this out in more detail. There are a couple of principal reasons why we've got so quickly, compared to previous experiences and normal, if you like, normal practice, to the authorisation to supply of this vaccine. And one of those is not least the fact that just about the entire global scientific and research community has been focused on this for many months. As we know from the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, they already, if you like, had a bit of a template to start from on the basis of coronavirus as such, not specifically this one. That they gave them a little bit of a head start, I think they would say. The other main element, and in all that focus, of course, that includes significant focus on funding of all that research and work, including from governments across the UK as well as globally. And then the regulatory authority has run a parallel process so that they have been looking at data from the phase 1 clinical trials as they happen, then the phase 2 as they happen, then the phase 3 as they happen, so that they can be reviewing the data almost in parallel with the clinical trials as they occur. All of that has concertinaed the process to the stage that we now are at. Of course, work continues, and work continues as we vaccinate across the UK and elsewhere to see how effective the vaccine is in preventing, for example, transmission, and the MHRA continues their process in order to move from authorisation to supply to full licence, as Ms Harper asks. The full detail of that I'm very happy to set out and make sure that in the first piece of information that Mr Fitzpatrick will circulate to MSPs. We set out in more detail and with greater expertise than I have offered exactly how that whole process has worked.
Brian Whittle to be followed by Tom Arthur.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what the GP surgery's role will be in the vaccination process and what consideration has been given to the impact on their day-to-day working?
Cabinet Secretary.
So we've reached a particular agreement with GPs, and from that we're in discussions with other independent contractors like pharmacists and dentists and optometrists, independent contractors to the NHS, in order to secure what I would describe as their sessional time. So their time in vaccination centres locally, so that they are critical part of the vaccination process, and where GP surgeries can also accommodate particular individuals in their patient list for whom going to the GP practice is much easier and more convenient than going anywhere else, that they do that too. But the overall intent here is to allow the continuation of the vaccination programme whilst not interfering in the important day-to-day business of the GP community and all their practice staff. So that's the agreement we've reached with them that allows both to continue, and I'm really pleased that we've made that agreement, and we will now, the discussion is now underway, as I said, with other independent contractors to the health service.
Tom Arthur to be followed by Ian Gray.
Can the Cabinet Secretary outline how the vaccine delivery programme will ensure that those living in more rural communities, such as Lochwinnoch in my Renfrewshire South constituency, will be able to receive the vaccine if they do not have access to a car or are unable or reluctant to use public transport?
Cabinet Secretary.
So 2 ways in which we're looking to make sure that that can happen. First of all is that work with our local authority colleagues in particular to identify any local premises that they have in a village or in a nearby town that we can then use and make COVID safe and use it as a local vaccination centre for small numbers of people. But the second way, which will be probably very effective in constituencies like Mr Arthur's and indeed my own, is mobile vaccination units, which the ambulance service will actively be involved in providing and also undertaking, of course, given their clinical experience, the vaccinations themselves. So both ways will ensure that we can cover those communities and take the vaccination to them.
Ian Gray to be followed by Alistair Allen.
Thank you. On International Day of People with Disabilities, we should remember that people with learning disabilities are particularly vulnerable to coronavirus, with a death rate over 6 times higher than the population as a whole. The JCVI do give some priority to adults with Down syndrome, but not to children. Can the CMO consider whether we should also give priority to parents and carers of children with Down syndrome and other disabilities, given the inevitable and daily contact involved in care and their anxiety that they will bring infection into the home?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, it's a really important question. I'm grateful to Mr Gray. Of course, he'll know that children are not in this programme because the clinical trials have not been completed at all for that age group in terms of the COVID vaccine. We have extended our interpretation of it to include carers. That's not just carers of adults, but also carers of children. But I am happy to undertake to go and look further at whether there is more that we need to do there, with particular reference to the groups that Mr Gray is thinking about here, or whether they are already covered in terms of our understanding of what we are going to do in widening, to some degree, includes personal assistance and others, to some degree, those that we think should be in that overall first wave, so between now and the spring.
Alistair Allen to be followed by Rachel Hamilton. It looks like Mr Allison's connection has been lost. I think we'll go on to Rachel Hamilton. We'll try to come back to Mr Allen. Rachel Hamilton.
Cabinet Secretary, how many vaccines does the Scottish Government believe it has the capacity to deliver in the initial weeks of the programme? And will the Parliament be advised, will we be advised in the Parliament of how many doses of the vaccine each local health board will receive?
Cabinet Secretary.
So, as I said at the outset, the UK Government has secured 800,000 doses. Our 8.2% share of that is 65,600 doses. That is what we are assured of in terms of delivery. I can't give other numbers because we do not have definite delivery dates for the rest of December. And so it's not possible for me to answer the other part of Ms Hamilton's question. As we get information on the supply and the likely delivery dates, then I'm very happy to ensure that members are advised of that. They will be distributed according to population share between our different health boards so that access is equitable. So we have a breakdown, for example, of the number of care home residents in each of our health board areas, so we know what we need to do to distribute across those boards to make sure that they can all receive and vaccinate all their care home residents, for example. We have a similar distribution, allocation and numbers for health and social care workers and indeed for various age groups. However, you need to remember that we are strongly advised by MHRA, in fact it is a requirement, that we keep 50% of all doses we receive in order to vaccinate for a second time those who've received the first vaccination. So giving definite numbers in the way that I understand absolutely members are looking for is not always as straightforward as might be thought, but we will do our very best to make sure that members have as much confirmed information they can rely on as possible, as quickly as we can give it to you.
Can I call Christine Graham to be followed by Neil Findlay?
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I too welcome the news that the vaccine can be transported unfrozen for up to 12 hours. And given the rurality of my constituency, that's very important in Midlothian, South Tweedale and Lauderdale. Is there a role for communities in identifying local sites for vaccinations to take place? And if so, who should they contact, their NHS or their local authority?
Cabinet Secretary.
There is absolutely a role for that, and already Ms Graham has suggested a couple of possibilities to me. The best people to contact is the local authority. I'd suggest they go straight to the Chief Executive of the local authority, because Solace, which, as you know, is the Chief Executive's collective body, is actively engaged with us in all of this. So the local authority is the best place to go to, because that is a huge part of the work, and extensive work, that local authorities have, I'm very pleased to say, agreed to do alongside us in making sure we can deliver this programme.
Thank you. Neil Findlay, and then we'll try Mr Allen again.
How will the Government ensure that as many of our older citizens as possible are vaccinated, but also that their human rights are respected, in particular referring to those who cannot give consent to vaccination?
Cabinet Secretary.
So in circumstances where an individual, and it will be some older citizens, but there will be others of our fellow citizens in that situation, where informed consent cannot be given, then the informed consent should be sought from the designated member of their family, where such a person exists. Either they may have power of attorney, or they may have another role in that regard, in order to see if we can get informed consent. There are well-known processes in healthcare for going through that exercise, and that is the one that needs to be taken in order to ensure that we are not vaccinating people without informed consent by the appropriate route, that we can secure that.
Again, we'll try Mr Allen again. Alistair Allen.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to hear the Cabinet Secretary confirm that the initial vaccine is more transportable than initially thought, something with clear benefits for island areas like my own. Can the Cabinet Secretary indicate more about the campaign of publicity and engagement that will take place among the first eligible groups to ensure maximum take-up?
Cabinet Secretary.
So over the course of this month and into January, we will be issuing a number of pieces of public information, initially a lot alongside the the safety of vaccines, how vaccines work, what to expect in terms of the national delivery programme, the priority groups and why they've been set out like that, the rough time frame we expect for all of those. It is an estimated time frame because, of course, it is dependent on supplies arriving and other vaccines being authorised and approved. And then, as I said, in January, we will do that national household door drop, so direct information to every household in Scotland, covering all of that, but also covering the local plans in their area and what they should expect to receive through the post or by whatever other means that is their personal invitation, and why we encourage them to go and accept that invitation and be vaccinated. And we'll just keep that going all the way through until we reach the end of the programme.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. Members, apologies to the half-dozen members wasn't able to reach, but we have to end there. We've got quite a few items of business to go through. The next item is actually a meeting of the Committee of the Whole Parliament, so I'm going to suspend the current meeting and then we'll resume as a Committee of the Parliament. This meeting is suspended.